So if your expectation here is to really get in detail on how to do claims and what a condition is, and these two can regurgitate 38 CFR and tell you what your left phalange condition 1% would be, this is not the presentation for that. We will have other opportunities throughout the year when we have a Veteran Service Officer contract, Veteran Service Officer forum, if I make that, in fact, hopefully that's a forum. Sometime next year. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. She's like, this guy's screwing this all up. Yes, it's been a long day.
What did he say?
No, so once a year, we do have a veteran, our agency hosts a Veteran Service Officer training event for our accredited service officers. So that still has not been on the calendar yet, but I'm sure our wonderful administrator will get that information out once that decision and location has been made. So go ahead, gentlemen. It is all yours.
Morning, everyone. I'm Max Gumbinger. I'm a service officer with our Olympia Service Center here, going on about 3 years to the state now. So really enjoying things, helping veterans with claims in Olympia. I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself, for 4 years.
Thank you. My name is Shawn Prescher, also an Army veteran, retired here in Washington State. I started with the WDVA Olympia office in 2018, and now I'm currently a program specialist as a VSO on Joint Base Loose McCord, helping our service members that are getting out of the service, getting them into these benefits right away so that they've got everything, and all they're worried about is getting a job and taking care of their family here in Washington. Thank you.
Yeah, test. Okay, so today we're going to be covering service-connected disability. We're going to be looking over the PACT Act and some major changes that happened because of that legislation. We're going to cover non-service-connected pension, as well as housebound aid and attendance with survivors' benefits rolled into that section there. And end things off with some VA basics on VA healthcare, and then we could leave some time at the end for questions. We're also going to be trying to include some questions at the end of each section for more pertinent information. So, starting things off with service-connected disability claims. Just kind of show of hands in the room, who here has either filed a claim on their own or has known someone who's actually had disability going through the VA? That's kind of what I expected, yeah, pretty well-known benefit there. It's one of the processes that a lot of veterans, they'll start the process, they'll get things going, they'll get a rating, and just never look at it again. Which, unfortunately, it can be a real rigmarole going through the first time around, which you just don't know what you're doing. The VA sends you letters, you go to where you're supposed to go, you get a rating, and things are done. But we're going to kind of go over what this service-connected disability is, what different avenues there are for service-connected disability, and then kind of the new changes under the PACT Act that happen there. So, starting off with what a disability claim is. So, VA service-connected disability is a benefit paid to veterans who have disabilities that were incurred in or caused by service. So once that claim is received, the VA reviews the evidence for the claim, conducts medical exams if necessary, and assigns a disability rating based off the evidence received. The disability rating that you receive is then totaled up with other disabilities that may be present, and you're assigned an overall disability rating. That rating determines your monthly payment. On top of that, certain ratings, like 30% or 100%, have other ancillary benefits that are associated with them. I'm not going to cover too much of the ancillary because there's a lot out there, but if you want any more in-depth information, I'll be sticking around after the class to maybe go over some things that are associated with certain ratings. So, for disability, there are actually numerous ways that you can achieve service-connected disability. So, generally it breaks down into 3 categories of disabilities that were existing prior to service, generally called aggravation. You have disabilities that occurred in service or direct service connection, and then disabilities that arose after you left service. So typically those are going to be presumptive disabilities or secondary. I'll get into a little bit more detail on those on the next slide here. There are other special circumstance claims. I'm not going to go into too much detail on those because they can get really in the weeds on very specific situations. So as far as types of claims that can get filed here, we have pre-discharge claims, or BDD, benefits delivery and discharge, Shawn's specialty. We have service connection based on pre-service disabilities, so aggravation, like I was touching on. Aggravation is essentially a disability that has existed prior to service. You have medical proof that there was a disability at the time, and then you have to prove to the VA that the disability was aggravated beyond natural progression from service. So it can be a little trickier than some disabilities to get approved, but it is an option. You have service connection based on in-service disabilities. So as for a lot of veterans, that's going to be the main claims they're going to be filing. Injuries that happen in service, illnesses, things along those lines. And then we have our post-service disabilities. So those are really key, especially for Vietnam veterans or other combat veterans. You have conditions that arise after your time in service. There's no real proof in your military records, but there are things, especially with legislation, that allows certain disabilities to be recognized to be caused in some way by service. Secondary disabilities are disabilities that arise because of a primary service-connected disability. So say you have a right knee injury and you start favoring your left knee more, you can then try and file for a secondary disability to the left knee related to the right knee. Presumptive arises around mainly toxic exposure. So the main one that people know about is going to be Agent Orange exposure for Vietnam veterans. And then the PACT Act introduced a lot of new avenues for burn pit exposed veterans in the Iraq, Afghanistan area, and then nuclear radiation exposed veterans, things along those lines. Presumptives, there's a specific list of disabilities that are approved as presumptive for exposure for veterans. So if you have anything on those lists, which they're located on va.gov if you need more information there, then you could be approved for that presumptive disability, even though there's no proof of it being arise during service. So as far as documents needed to apply, so at minimum you're going to need your discharge paperwork just to prove veteran status, and then medical treatment records, both in service and post service. Both are going to be key. Best route, if you don't have your in-service medical records, would be to start trying to get those either through the National Archives or through whichever government agency could be holding on to those. The National Archives has a nice chart of when your periods of service and then what branch you were in determines kind of where your medical records are located. So if needed, you can apply to specific agencies and get those records. It's something you can apply without your military medical records. It just makes the whole process a lot easier for you if you have them on hand at the time. And then other documents that are needed, depending on situations, things like marriage certificates or birth certificates you can look at add, dependents to your claim, things along those lines. Now, the claims process can be really opaque for a lot of veterans out there. They just turn in the paperwork and really not sure what's going on behind the scenes. I have a very brief introduction of what on the VA side of things goes down. So first step is you get your paperwork filled out, you send it in, you have that claim received by the VA. That's kind of that first step. Once it's received, they have someone called a veteran service representative look over the claim, look for the major documents needed, look for any documents that are missing, start going through and ordering exams, things along those lines. Typically it's taken around 7 to 21 days. These are general timelines based off VA's average time on their website. Things could change depending on situation, but that's one of the keys of bringing in your own documentation ahead of time is to speed up that processing. Less work you have for the VA, the quicker they're gonna get things done for you. So once you're out of that initial review stage, it goes on to evidence gathering. That's where they're gonna conduct the exams, order any private medical records that are needed, order military records, personnel records, things along those lines. Tends to be the longest portion of the processing, so you see about 30 to 90 days for that. And especially with the exams, it's very key to attend the exams you're scheduled for, or at least give a good reason why you cannot, and see if you can reschedule, because those exams are what the rater's going to use to determine your disability rating, along with your medical evidence, of course. So once that whole process is done, it goes to the preparation for notification. So the decision is made, and then it's reviewed by a senior rater and signed off on. Once that rating is made, they'll go ahead and send it on and give you a decision letter in the mail. And then you're looking at maybe 7 to 14 days for that mail to get to you, and the claim is done. That's just the general claims process. It gets into a little bit more difficulty when you have appeals or you're looking to overturn a decision the VA's made for you if they denied any issues, or maybe you don't agree with the ratings. Whole separate process. It kind of follows a similar guideline, but can change it depending on the claims avenue you're going down. Now, getting into the PACT Act. So that was signed August 10th of 22. changed the disability process pretty vastly, honestly. The big ticket items were, of course, adding presumption for burn pit exposed veterans. So anyone in the Southwest Asia area after around 2001. Now, you can look at the next slide's going to have a lot of the disabilities and the areas you would need to serve in for that. Another key point was it did expand Vietnam Agent Orange exposure. So used to be boots on ground Vietnam and then Blue Water Navy 12 miles off the coast were kind of the main avenues for exposure there. Now the PACT Act changed to add a lot of areas like Thailand, Guam, American Samoa. So a lot of areas in the Southwest Asia theater that weren't in country, but it really opened up some avenues for veterans who had been denied previously. Now getting into more detail on the burn pits specifically. So as you can see, to be eligible for burn pit exposure, you need to have been in any of these locations after September 11, 2001, or any of these areas on the bottom after August 2nd, 1990, so covering both Desert Storm and later Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns. Keynote is it covers all those countries, the sea locations and airspace above those locations. So wide-reaching net, thankfully. As far as disabilities that are recognized for burn pit exposure, you have a lot of respiratory conditions like asthma, bronchitis, COPD, and there's a number of cancers. Included a general list on there. The list on VA.gov is quite extensive. Not even covering specific cancers, but more regions, so head cancer, respiratory cancer, things like that. Very extensive list. I've got the link on there, so when the slides go out, you should be able to navigate to that list and look over exactly what other disabilities are on there. Another key portion of the PACT Act, not covered here, it opened up toxic exposure for not just presumptive disabilities like this, but for others along the lines of more general military occupational exposures. So things like jet fuel exposure, missile techs and the nasty chemicals used to clean, those kind of areas. Things along those lines, even if you weren't in any of these areas, but you were exposed to some nasty chemicals in your line of work, it'd be something to maybe look into, talk to a VSO, get a little more information on. Those kind of claims are not as cut and dry as a presumptive claim would be, but as long as you can make a pretty good case, have some maybe medical evidence to back you up, it's something to definitely look into. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to Shawn. He's going to hand over the VA pension and aid and attendance benefits.
Thanks, Max. Okay, what is VA pension?
Sorry. Yeah, questions?
Yeah.
That's right.
Go back to questions.
Sorry about
Any
that.
questions?
Got any
on
questions for
service connection
disability?
stuff?
I have one. I know that there's a lot of lawsuits coming out around like radiation exposure. Is there anything in the future that you see maybe, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Hi. I know that there are some, class actions that are coming up around radiation exposure. Is there anything that you think is gonna be coming up soon, the same as like a PACT Act for those, mostly I was gonna say sailors and who are with, radioactive, ships and working submarines?
Right. Nothing that's currently on a pipeline that's being seen. One of the big portions of getting things approved is congressional action. So I know there's a couple different groups working with Congress over other service areas or other exposures that weren't covered directly by the PACT Act.
Yeah.
So it may be something coming along that pipeline. Haven't seen any direct indication of something happening just yet.
This might be more for Shawn, but on the JBLM, the BDD program, I see, being at Skagit, I see it at Island County, and I get a lot of veterans, mostly senior veterans that seem to be able to get within that 6 months, not the junior vets, or junior active. But are you seeing because they're coming to me going, I'm not sure if they did it right, I never met the person who did my paperwork, and there's really no warm handoff to, at least to me in Skagit County, from any service officers that are working on base. I mean, since you are WDVA, are you guys checking in with all the bases around Washington State and seeing how they're doing things?
Not specifically all of the bases. I know specifically on JBLM, there is a larger amount of VSOs on the base. We just brought 2 more in from WDVA, so we're trying to help as many as we can. We're also going out and talking and teaching about the BDD, trying to get people in early so that they get their benefits delivered when they separate. Now, within the VSOs, we're trying to make sure as a conglomerate, right, of passing them off if they're leaving the installation and they're leaving the state, that we tell them, here's our counterpart in Louisiana, here's our counterpart. You know, find a VSO when you get there to help you, and find a squad to help you when you get there so you can find employment and all that. But then what we need to do better, I think, is passing them off. So where are you living? Are you staying here in Thurston? Are you moving up to Skagit? Or are you headed down to Clark, right? And putting them in contact with those services and resources in the counties. I think that's something that's better that we could do there. I'm not sure on the other installations as far as what the agency is. Maybe Paul can talk a little bit about it.
Sure, I can, because that's one of the things I do. So to answer your question, if a service member is coming from a different duty assignment, right, we have no idea that they're here until a little, maybe 5 months after the fact, because we do not get notified until we get a DD-214 from DMDC. What happens is we will actually send a governor's letter to them, a welcome letter based on the address of what they put as their home of record. So if they're moving to Skagit County or Thurston or Okanagan, wherever the case may be, we will mail them a letter with our contact information as well as a link to our resources, which part of those resources entails the locations of the closest service officer in the county that you work for. We do it on JBLM because it's a joint base, it's a big base. Some of the other services, it's a lot harder to get into. Navy, as an example. So if you're in the middle of a ship in the Pacific Ocean, you're not going to be able to get to TAP. They're not going to put you on a helicopter and fly you to let's say you're going out to Bremerton. They're not going to fly you to Bremerton to complete your transition assistance program, right? Because they need you on the ship to do your job. So they do it virtually. They have a different process. And there are occasions, and it hurts to say this sometimes, but once they get back into port, you know, they pack their bags and they get off the ship and they've just been discharged from the military. That does happen because of the nature of their work. To go back to your other questions, yes, we do reach out to other installations. Our director has gone to the different naval facilities throughout the post. He's talking to the commanders, not just the base commanders, but the commanding generals or admirals of those installations to try to build a partnership to help alleviate that. So at least from our standpoint, when you leave Washington State, the intent is to leave with your BDD claim completed. To put in perspective, on JBLM, out of the 6,000 or 7,000 roughly that leave the military a year, 17% leave with the BDD claim, and that's right in our backyard. One of the reasons for that is, as you mentioned earlier, it's hard for the leadership, junior leadership, squad leaders, folks on the front line, to let their soldiers, complete the process in a timely manner. And Shawn will get into more about that and how he helps handle that situation where service members come to him and they've already missed that window where they're no longer able to submit a BDD claim. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, and if you have any data that you can share with all the VSOs about our bases and our areas.
Sure, get with me afterwards and we'll share whatever we have. One and then two.
Go ahead. Okay. I have a question regarding the PACT Act. Under the presumptive cancers, there's one that says brain cancer and then affiliating it with the brain. Many veterans that, or I should say prospective survivors that I've talked to, their husbands develop Alzheimer's. And some of that is linked to their diabetic or their heart condition. However, those same veterans that I'm talking about were exposed to toxins. And I'm wondering if they're going to expand the PACT Act to put in their Alzheimer's for those exposures.
So it's not something that's directly been hinted to as of yet, but as part of the PACT Act, VA is conducting studies and following up with both the burn pit registries and the Agent Orange registries for veterans, and looking for more data to possibly add more presumptives in the future as some things become available. It's just process. The Agent Orange list when it started was a lot smaller than it is these days, so there's just been a lot of work and data to come together and add other conditions there.
And real quick to add on to that, I'm seeing everybody that's coming out now. So I'm seeing all of our Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq, and I'm seeing more and more, what do I want to say? I'm seeing more and more cases of things that are beyond what the Congress has listed, and I'm seeing skin conditions,
Yes.
I'm seeing eye conditions, I'm seeing that, and it's directly tied, I think, to a lot of this. So I expect in the future, not only, you know, they're going to discover this through some of these studies, but that's what I'm seeing from the ground. Some of these service members, they're coming with skin conditions and eye conditions, because your body's a filter. They're filtering out all that stuff in those regions.
So for military members that are in the disability evaluation system, they have their VA ratings well before they separate. And there is an opportunity for them to appeal, but their appeal can only be for the condition that they're being found unfit for. So for other conditions that they have VA ratings for, not their unfitting ones, but the other ones, is there an opportunity for them to appeal those decisions while they're still in service? Or do they need to wait until they're actually separated? Thank you.
And I think it's a case-by-case basis. They're there to help try to get them, they focus mostly on the ones that they're getting separated for. But when they work with their team, they can try to get those altered or changed or get a different decision before they separate, and they get their actual rating from the VA. So I've seen cases where it's happened both ways. You know, I've seen a service member only get sent through the system, and they were only able to claim the items that they were being separated for, right? And that's not the right way to do it. But more recently, I'm seeing everything getting added, and they're able to at least get them claimed, and then from there, we're helping to pick them up and advise them to say, okay, so this is what it looks like you're getting out in a month, and this is what they're giving you. And they're kind of at that point to where they're not able to they don't have enough time to appeal the decision and try and get a different rating on the way out. So we're advising them, okay, where are you going? Let's find you a VSO so that you can start this conversation. You can send them the paperwork that you have at least, and then you can start working on it so when you get out, you're going to get your rating started and your payments started, but here's who you can contact to help you in your local area where you're headed to get your appeal started.
And I'll add to that. So for the IDEs, individuals who are being medically separated from the military, whether it's retirement or due to injury, there are 2 ratings that a person gets. The first one is your VA disability, right? It's a presumptive rating. It's not official until you get out. The other rating that you're referring to may be the military rating. That will determine if you get separated or retire from military service. I want to say you have to be at 30% for the military rating. Usually you are not allowed to appeal the military rating. When they make the decision, it's a board, it's a panel of senior NCOs and officers that you'll stand before that will say, this is what the legal requirement is on the military side, so we're either going to separate you medically, retire you, or retain you. Those are pretty much your 3 options. And as you exit the military, yes, you can always, add a condition to your VA claim or do a notice of disagreement and things of that nature.
So full disclosure, so I work at JVLM, and I work with a team of folks who represent soldiers who are going through the DES, Disability Evaluation System. But that's always the issue that comes up. So for instance, they're being kicked out for a bad back, let's say, and they've got the rating, and if that's the issue that at hand, we can contest that through our system, through the DES system, with the VA. If, for instance, if they initially get a 10% rating and they're trying to get it bumped up to a 20, but then they say, well, I've got these other ratings that I've got also from the VA, but can I contest those while I'm still in service? And we can't as part of our process. So I guess that's what I've heard is that really you guys can't really.
We cannot. No, we usually just advise at that point on what they can do for the next steps.
Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
And again, when they get that initial rating, it's not an official rating just yet.
It's
not
a provisional.
official.
It's
Right.
provisional.
It's a provisional until they separate from the military.
And they get their official VA.
Correct. And then that's when you are allowed to do a notice of disagreement or appeal those all of the ratings or all of the conditions that was on your initial claim, or add to begin with.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Great. Okay. We're going to move on to pension, aid and attendance, and some of the basic eligibility requirements. So VA pension is a needs-based benefit, and it pays out to a veteran, a spouse, or any dependent children who has limited or no income. And the veteran must have served during a period of war. In addition, there's several other criteria for the VA pension. They have to be at least 65 or older, or they're permanently or completely disabled due to their own, not due to their own willful misconduct, okay? And was discharged from a branch in the armed forces under conditions that were not dishonorable. Okay, they also have to have at least served 90 days of continuous military service and at least 1 day during the wartime periods that are recognized by Congress. They also, or they have to have served in the amount of time during a wartime period and was discharged or released with a disability. Okay, and then they also have to meet the family income, which is below the yearly limit set by Congress in their area. Survivor's pension, okay? Survivor's pension is that. It is for the survivor of a service member, and the requirements are that you have to have been married to the veteran at the time of death. You were not remarried at age by 55 or older, and your countable, again, income is below that yearly threshold set by Congress. Any questions on survivor's pension? Okay, DIC, dependency and indemnity compensation. Again, this is a benefit that's paid out to surviving dependents of a veteran whose death was determined to be service-related. They were married during the time of death, and they have not remarried before they were 55 or older. Aid and attendance. Aid and attendance is an increased needs-based supplement paid in addition to the pension of any eligible veteran or surviving spouses. Aid and attendance may not be paid without first being eligible for the basic pension. So you got to meet that criteria first for pension. The old pension, Section 306 pensions, they're not eligible for aid and attendance. You cannot receive a VA non-service pension and a service connected compensation at the same time. The VA will automatically award you the one that is the higher amount. And here are the eligibility requirements for aid and attendance. You are a patient in a nursing home due to mental or physical incapacity, or you're required aid from another person to perform your daily living, such as bathing, feeding yourself, dressing yourself, or a lot of ors in these. You are bedridden, okay, and your disabilities require that you remain in bed for the prescribed course of either a convalescent or through the treatments, or you have corrected vision acuity of 5/200 or less in both eyes, or a field of vision of 5 or less. Yes?
Sorry, I didn't want to ask a question before you finished your slides, but I wanted to know if this is, sorry.
No, good. I'm slow, I'm old.
You're right. So when you talk about disabilities, this is for the veteran themselves or retired
Yes.
veteran, and then this
Yes.
is also any disability, not just service related,
Correct.
service connected.
Yep,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Joshua, back.
For these eligibility requirements, is there like a minimum rating that they have to have, or?
No, because it's non-service connected, right?
Oh,
It's a
my bad.
pension. It's based on income and the other eligibility requirements, right? Now the pension income limitations. So a pension is reduced by the amount of countable income of the veteran's spouse and any dependent children. When a veteran is on Medicaid and is in a nursing home, the amount is limited to $90 in addition to anything that they have for personal needs, okay? It is possible the veteran or surviving spouse who is ineligible for basic pension may become eligible with aid and attendance benefits because of a higher income limit is able to be applied, right? All right. Documents that you need. Again, the discharge or separation, the DD-214 is key to everything. The marriage or death certificates of the veteran, and then the assets and income expenses. It's quite a comprehensive form you've got to fill out with all of their expenses, what they get in, what they pay out. They have verification of all sources of income, whether that's Social Security or anything that they receive. And then the medical expenses, that's a big one. So keeping track of all the medical expenses to include toiletries and everything that they have to do to take care of themselves while they're either in the nursing home or they're under aided assistance at home. Okay, VA healthcare. You want me to cover this, or you want to step into that?
Go ahead.
All right.
Pretty short.
Basic eligibility, VA healthcare enrollment, and special eligibility. We've been switching the way that we talk to our transitioning service members that are getting out. It's not about your VA disability pension or your disability compensation. It's the cost of healthcare right now. It's ridiculous. The first slide I bring up in my classes is, here's the cost of healthcare across the United States by state. Right? And you're looking at $1,000 a month for a single individual, and it's a lot, right? And so one of the things we talk to them is the path to healthcare, because it's important. How do they get their service connection if they haven't been to combat? So some of the basic eligibilities for healthcare. Most veterans not receiving a disability compensation, like I said, or pension, they have to complete a financial assessment to determine if they qualify for free healthcare based on their income, okay? Most non-service connected and non-compensatable 0% connected service veterans who report a gross household income under the VA thresholds may be subject to income verification. So they got to prove what they make. Okay? And then healthcare for the PACT Act. Again, this opened up a lot of eligibility requirements for folks, a lot. For the folks that are coming out of the service, everybody that was in some of those locations, those hazard duty locations, you know, they're automatically granted into this. They don't have to worry about a service connection, which is good. They're taking care of them right away. Veterans who were part of the TERA also are now eligible, so that's a lot of those toxic exposures. VA healthcare enrollment, you can apply or enroll, of course, on the phone. My partner, when we teach on the base, is actually a social worker for VA Puget Sound out of Lakewood, out of American Lake, and she says this is the path of least resistance to get into VA healthcare. She says it all the time. So you can call, give them eligibility, get the DD-214 to them, and then verbally you can give your permission to get access to the VA through the phone call. Or again, you can complete the 1010 Easy form either in your home, or you can stop by and you can apply at any of your local VHA healthcare hospitals. Joshua, yes sir.
Just a quick addition to that, because I know exactly who you're talking about that gave you that information.
Love it.
When doing the 1010 Easy form, like even though some of the boxes are optional to fill out, it is best to fill them out anyway because it reduces your chances of being denied.
Correct. We also, because I'm dealing with a lot of younger individuals that are coming out of the service, there's also a way to complete it online. And if you deal with any BDDs or service members that are coming, they can apply ahead of time. They're just not able to receive VA healthcare until they become a veteran, right? And so if you do send someone to the website, make sure they log in to the VA website, va.gov, with their login. And what that does is that goes through and confirms their identity, and the VHA actually goes and reaches out into the database and tries to retrieve any DD-214s, because that they do have access to some of those electronically, okay? So if they do go through that process, just like Joshua said, you know, make sure they log in to, number one, confirm their identity, and then secondly, make sure they do not miss any block on that form. If they miss something, then it defaults errors out in the VA. Then you got to go through the 1010 Easy in person usually, okay? So it's a little bit more complicated. You've got to make sure everything's completed, and the key is to log in so that the VA can confirm your identity through your login. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. All right, any questions on VA healthcare? Okay.
So you get the veteran that applies for the pension and gets it. So then he gets the letter saying, yes, you are eligible. We'll give you X amount of dollars a month. But nowhere on that letter does it state to that veteran that when he starts getting Social Security, that those two fight against each other. So then after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, bam, he gets a letter from the VA saying, you owe us $20,000. So can the VA do anything on that letter that they send to that veteran saying, when you start collecting Social Security,
Yeah.
your VA pension drops? Or are they just gonna leave them in the dark?
That's a really good question. You know, I wish things would work that way. I wish these government agencies would interact more in order to prepare them for things and eventualities, or the feedback that we give them, so that these things do not happen. You know, unfortunately, as a VSO, that's the things that we've got to warn them about, right? We've got to prepare them, you know, and we've got to follow through and keep track of them, do the work back around to make sure, okay, you know, we got awarded, you get a notification, or you reach back out and say, hey, if you've heard anything. Or when you sit and file, you know, you prepare them. And I try to do that. I prepare them because a lot of these men and women that leave the service, they don't stay in they don't stay in Washington. In fact, I usually don't hear from hardly any of them, because they're going out and they're getting connected with, you know, the team that's in Tacoma or the team that's here in Spokane, and that's their new VSO. So I try to prep them ahead of time as much as I can, and then we've just got to do the diligence to follow through, sir.
Yeah, there's actually one more.
Kind of
Yeah, go ahead.
piggyback on that real quick. On that form, when they're filling out for pension, it does ask if you've looked into Social Security as well. And then they also does say you need to report any income at any point in time that you do receive yearly.
And that's,
So if they're not doing that,
yeah.
it's partially their fault too.
Yeah.
Yes, we, as VSOs, we need to let them know, hey, be paying attention to this, but also the veteran has to take due diligence in reporting what they're getting,
Any
so that way
change in
they don't
income.
end up in that position. We can do waivers all the time to try to see if it helps out with hardships and stuff like that too. But we do have to leave some responsibility with the veteran themselves, that there are things you don't know, talk to a VSO and we can help you through that as best we can.
Real quick, Paul.
Real quick. There's also one good development between VA and Social Security on that front. There was a recent period that VA had not checked in with Social Security. The system weren't communicating very well for a number of years. When the system finally linked back up, there was quite a few pension veterans that were going to be disenrolled and given a debt. VA came back and said that, you know, errors on our side, we'll go ahead and waive the debts this time around. So at least that's a step in the right direction. Hopefully it's something they can continue doing, because it's really not their fault that VA took so long to look back into the Social Security.
I got all three questions. I see 1, 2, 3.
My question's real quick. Is the health care or the health eligibility center the same as the one where a person would apply for the spousal caregivers program?
So no, that one is
That's
actually
different.
Yeah, the
Okay.
caregivers all through same VHA for the Veterans Health Administration, and it's handled usually at the VA hospitals themselves. So there's going to be a caregiver coordinator there that can assist.
Yeah.
Just gonna circle back to the question of, Social Security. So if that does occur, right, and somebody is going through having to pay back that amount, are there ways, like we said, is there any waivers? Is there something that we can do? And then how do I get to know how to do that process? Because I would love to have that information up my sleeve.
Yeah, absolutely. There definitely is a waiver process. Typically, when you get the debt letter from the VA, it'll detail the process of where to apply for waivers. Best thing, especially for hardship waiver, that's where if the VA is going to recoup that pension from the veteran, they're going to end up homeless, unable to pay bills, things like that.
Especially on
Is-
fixed income, yeah.
Right, exactly. Insufficient income. Best way would be there's a specific form you fill out asking for the waiver, and then including their financial information just to show that this is going to put them in a real hard spot if they recoup that. And VA is pretty good about waiving either portion or possibly all, or even reducing the amount, taking longer to recoup benefits, things like that. Yeah, that's going to be on the debt page. I think DMC, Debt Management Center.
So I've been posed with a question recently, actually several times. There seems to be some confusion about the difference between what you're talking about right now and an individual who is receiving service-connected disability benefits and Social Security. And I would love to hear clarification. Are we talking apples and oranges here? So an individual who is receiving a service-connected disability benefit and wants to apply for Social Security because they've hit that age, are they going to run into that same problem? So they're two different pots of money, is what you're saying?
Exactly right.
Okay, that's what I needed clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, as they mentioned, this is income-based, and that's the key, and they're non-service connected, so it's just a program that you can apply for if you meet the financial requirements. You don't even have to be service connected.
Right. You can have a disability from any walk of life. Come in.
Hey, how are you doing? I just want to add, as a VSO, I get referrals all the time from senior resource centers, Medicare workers, anything like that. And so it's good if they don't know the programs. If they get the veteran in my office, that's a win, no matter what. But to help expectations, I kind of frame the pension like it's a last resort. So if you come up in another way, and there's another program that pays for your stay at an assisted living facility. The pension is a set amount and your income factors into that, so you're paid the difference.
Yeah.
So if you come up another way and it increases your income, it will reduce your pension. So I look at that as like a last resort. You got every benefit you could outside of the VA. You didn't qualify for any other VA programs. That's when the pension comes into play.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with that. A key portion of that, pension can be a good introductory benefit for a lot of those older veterans who hadn't had contact with the VA. As long as they meet that income guideline, you can get the pension started and maybe start trying to work towards service-connected disability at that point.
So 9 times out of 10, someone gets referred for, aid and attendance. And they just say, oh, you need to fill out aid and attendance. Well, that goes on top of another benefit. So they get sent to my office thinking they're applying for aid and attendance, and we're like, we got to do something else first, and usually it's a better solution, right? So you get 10% for tinnitus, then you get VH healthcare or VHA, and then you can apply through VHA for veteran-directed care or something like that, and that's where the real solution comes into play. So if pension gets them in the door, that's great, but although it's good that we have the program, you're better if you don't qualify for the pension.
Absolutely.
Getting at the ground level, getting in the door.
Things are not good if you qualify for that. So the goal, I try to make people not eligible for it. That's by giving them something better.
Absolutely.
It's taxable, right?
No, so pension is not taxable. Yeah, any kind of VA compensation is not going to be taxable for it.
Any other questions on healthcare? I think that's it.
Any other healthcare questions? Yeah, we can actually move that along to the general. Any general questions at this point?
In the PACT Act, it was also talking about other bases that they're doing reviews on for chemical exposures, and there was supposed to be a report out this year. Is that going to happen, or is that being delayed?
So it is going to happen. They haven't given a firm timeline as of yet, but yeah, just like I said, there was going to be a 2-year research and review process with VA. They haven't published a final date yet, so we'll see. They have not said it's delayed as of yet, so we're hoping by the end of the year they should have some report out.
Just to add on that, okay? After I got out and I joined the VHA, they asked me to join some of these studies, okay? If you can encourage your veterans to be a part of some of these studies, at least their information, some of their, they asked us about my family history and my background, add to it so that the VA has the data and the information to go back and to add some of these things, So when someone has a medical condition and they're like, well, I don't know if it came from the burn pits, okay? Just have them talk to those doctors so that there is that medical evidence that is starting to gather. It may not happen in the next 2 years, but goodness, please have them come forward and disclose that information so they have more ammunition for the future for us, okay?
So I'll add to that before the question. It's called the Million Veteran Program.
Yeah.
And they just hit 1 million veterans. What they do is, if you're not familiar with it, is they just look at medical records. They don't look at your name, your social, none of that. They look at conditions that the VA is treating when you volunteer for this program. So if they see an over-absorbent amount of left knee conditions or whatever for skin conditions for individuals who served in the Persian Gulf area.
Or South Korea.
Or South Korea or any others. That helps them gather the information to make decisions that you're asking questions about. We have no idea if Congress is going to add more conditions. They have to have some type of data for them to make a decision to go, we identify that this is being very prevalent and we need to add this now. So that's how these laws get updated. That's how they update the CFR, by information. They're trying to get away from, it took us so many years to figure out how bad Agent Orange was. Gulf War syndrome. All those presumptive conditions, the VA is really working hard to not do that again and wait 40, 50 years before they can go, something's wrong here, we need to look into this. So it is an important program. If you're a veteran or you're the person that is sitting in front of you serve within that era that they're looking for volunteers, I highly encourage somebody to do it, because it may help them, but it may also help future generations for eons to come to identify issues like that. And yes, I'm coming back for the question now.
It is, yeah. VA healthcare, I think.
So I serve veterans in Okanagan County. And if you've ever been up to our part of the state, you actually know that things are sparse. And our veterans tend to hang out in the mountains. They don't necessarily trust government. We have a lot of Vietnam vets, I think especially from that particular era. So the question I have first is, I've had a heck of a time trying to actually find a VSO that I can refer them to that doesn't require them to get special transportation to make it the 3+ hours to Spokane. What resources do we have in our extremely rural and sparsely populated area?
So he's going to provide you with some contact information. I can tell you I know what we're doing, because fortunately Steve is not here. He is our regional expert in regards to all things veteran services, especially service officers. We do our best. I mean, Steve Gill, our administrator, one of his main charges is to go out and talk to your county commissioners to bring up these issues with different counties. I mean, each county has their own different problems, right? Let's just be honest. But at the end of the day, it's that the county commissioners, your Veterans Advisory Board members have a lot of influence on doing things like helping develop rules, develop programs within your counties to help alleviate that. There are some grants. The Highly Rural Transportation Grant is available through the federal VA. There are some requirements. I forget what they are off the top of my head. It's mostly veteran population or population of the county that you can purchase a van. The VA will give you a van to help transport services, as well as costs associated with providing drivers. Again, we can touch base after this. I'll give you my contact information. We're more than happy to share that information with you. So that's some of the things that we're doing. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I can assure you, we've been to Okanagan County quite often. We have talked to county commissioners up there. We have talked to the veterans in that area. We're doing our best to try to. It's not just that county, and a lot of the rural counties have this issue. And we're doing everything we can to help alleviate that by providing information that helps support your county commissioners when they make decisions. So hopefully that helps. Again, please get with me afterwards and we'll connect you with the right person. Chris has a question.
I'm just gonna say, I'm on a committee, it's called under WISD.
In Skagit County, I'm on a committee, it's a WISDOT pre-needs special transportation grant for rural counties. And I would definitely look that up and see if your group, your VAB, your commissioners would apply for that, because what that offers is free vehicles, gas, paying somebody to drive people, and that would be your county's vehicle to do that. And lots of people are getting awarded, and it's just for rural counties. So it's through WISDOT special needs grants.
And just FYI, this is something our administrator says all the time. His goal in life is to get a service officer in all 39 counties. I mean, so when he gets that, he's gonna retire. So I'd like to see him do that quickly, because that would mean service is there, but I don't want him to retire because I really like him. Heard that, right, Steve? I know it's recorded, so you're gonna listen to this later. I support you, but I don't. Any other questions? Wow, we really are standing between you and lunch. Oh, no, we haven't, okay. So close to 30 minutes.
No, real quick, I know a lot of the services, you know, you meet with a VSO and you're like, cool, we got these benefits for you, but what you really need is healthcare or something other. Do you have any success establishing like a formal referral process for veterans? You know, normally if you have a point of contact at the clinic, you can say, hey, this is coming your way, you know, please take care. But have you had any success establishing that, and if so, how?
Personally, not so much. Unfortunately, turnover is pretty high at the VA facilities right now, so it's really hard to get that good point of contact that's going to stay there. Really, it's the Health Eligibility Center is that great first step, and then if they got any questions, we can get them in touch with their patient advocate team. Those are usually the ones that can get you more direct contact with specific departments within VHA for that.
Yeah, and we partner with our regional offices to do our best, but you know, when you call that number, it could be somebody in Alaska, for all we know, that's working the phone line, taking that information. And there's no way we would ever know that your application went to somebody in Alaska when it's 12 degrees outside. We have no idea. Any other questions? All right, well, we hope you enjoyed the presentation. Oh, you do? Yes?
I did, good job.
Oh, good job. Thanks, Josh. Thank you. He's doing the right way. Good job. Yeah, thank you very much. Again, please do our survey. A lot of what we're going to do next year is going to depend upon your feedback to us. You know, the information that you provide to us really helps us determine what our topics are going to be next year. So if there's a lot of PACT Act information questions, we're going to do a lot of that. If there's a lot of individual questions about claims, we're going to focus on that. Mental health, whatever the case may be, transitioning service members, our Washington State Military Transition Council. So we greatly appreciate that feedback, because that really does help us provide more information to all of you. And with that, you have an extra 30 minutes for lunch. You have a wonderful day.